Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Dialogue Podcast. I'm pumped for you to listen to this one because it's very nuts and bolts practical. We are giving you a list of some of our favorite books that we've listened to or read over the years that have been really impactful in our lives and why they mattered, why they were important. And so hopefully you find some here that are valuable content for you as well. All right, let's dive right into it.
Let's dive in. What's up? That's a beautiful sweater you have, by the way.
Thank you. It's super gray out today, and so I needed a little color and spice in my life.
That green suits you.
Thank you, dear.
And
what would you call this green? I don't know.
Kermit the Frog.
Kermit green. Okay.
Kermit the Frog.
That's fine. I can get down with that. I've always liked Kermit. He's probably my favorite Muppet.
I need to expand my vocabulary for green Pantones, like just Pantones in general, right? Yeah. Like what are the?
It would be too bright to be like a Celadon, right?
Oh my! I've never heard that. I've literally never heard that word before.
Anyway,
I got to tell you though, from my perspective here, I don't know from the camera angle, like you got all this beautiful greenery behind you. You got these plants.
Yeah.
And then you're green, and then.
And
then you're just radiant. You're radiant, and you very much like.
What are you? What
it's just organic. It just feels very organic and happy.
Well, good.
And we're here. The seasons are changing a little bit, right? So summer, we're starting to kind of. She's letting us know she's out of here.
Yeah,
and fall's
that's
coming.
kind of why I wanted this. I'm like, it feels like a last little holding on to a little bit of.
It has one foot
green.
In fall and one foot in summer.
Yeah.
And it's appropriate.
Transitional wear.
Appropriate. Tasteful.
Well, thank you. I'm glad
welcome.
I'm glad you appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You're always the better dressed part of this duo. So I'm just trying to catch up.
I don't know about that.
But I also have my tuxedo shoes on today, which these are just kind of a favorite for me. I love these.
Wow.
Anyways, just keeping it formal.
Way to go.
So jumping into actual conversation, although I do appreciate you leading out with a compliment. That's always appreciated. Never feel like you can't do that. But you have been gone nonstop. This man has been globetrotting in a big way.
It got away from me, actually. So let me tell you what happened. So
tell us all about it.
A friend of mine who is put on a conference. They do it every year. Reached out to have me speak at the conference, and he reached out way in advance, so like a year in advance, and loved this dude. I'd never been down. They're in Orlando. I'd never been to his church, never seen the stuff they're doing. So he's one of these guys. I see him at events all the time, and he actually, man, he's like one of the nicest guys in the world. He texts me almost every Sunday.
Wow.
Just an encouragement. I know.
Oh my
I should have told you. Like an encouragement. Like, man, God's going to use you today and all this stuff. Yeah. And he's got a great church, and he's got a busy life. And I'm thinking man, this guy's thinking about me. And I'm sure he reaches out to other people too, but he's a great guy.
That just shows, just a level of kindness that's inherent to him. That's cool.
Yeah. And so I really wanted to go see, their stuff in person and just be able to encourage him and his family. And so I said yes, like a year ago. And then about 10 months ago, my alma mater reached out and said, hey, would you do this master class? And I've done it a couple times. And I had some ideas of how we could do it even better.
Yeah.
And so I said yes to that. And I saw him in proximity, and I was like, that's two things in proximity. Because I don't love to travel.
Right.
I don't love it.
You really don't, actually. Some people just love it. They love hopping on a plane and going somewhere. To you, it's like a necessary evil to get where you're going.
It takes it out of me.
You don't love it.
It takes it out of me. The older I get, the more I feel like it just takes me longer to recover.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I don't want to have to take 2 days off.
It's interesting because even without jet lag, even if there's not some major time difference or something, I do feel like it kind of sucks.
I feel like those trips, you're just on all the time.
That's true.
And
it's the nature of the trip.
It feels like you're on all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas, in a normal work week, you got some on and you got some off. Mm-hmm. And it's not like this, you know what I'm saying?
Like pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
You've packed every minute with work. Yeah.
So
you were home for 48 hours.
I said yes to the two of those things. And then, of course, a few months ago, we got the opportunity to go to Rome. That was kind of last minute.
Yeah.
Which then was in proximity to these. And that was one, it's like, that was the third thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well.
And I was only home for week and a half, 2 weeks before that. And
Yeah.
I had been gone for 10 days for work as well. So
Yeah.
we have really kind of had like.
It was not ideal to be
lot.
going that much, but it was one of those, like, the way it came together, it was like, okay, I don't want to.
You're not going to say no to
Yeah, and I'm not
going
to call them back and say, sorry, I'm
Right.
going to go to Rome. I'm not going to come do your thing. We needed to say yes. So that means I've been gone a lot, but I'm glad to be home. I think we only have one more little trip before the end of the year.
I want to thank you for being a trooper today because you are currently on some antibiotics. You picked something up on the trip that was kind of kicking you a little and kicking you a lot.
A little
let's be
under
honest.
the weather, but we're
really, but you're on the mend
Yes.
and you're devoted, and so here you are.
I would say the same to you because I think what's funny is I was sick when I got home, right? And you nursed me back to health, but you nursed me from a distance,
From as much of a distance as I could manage.
and then I start feeling a little bit better. And I get, I'm kind of out of bed, and you come and you kiss me right on the lips, which I appreciated.
It was like force of habit.
I looked at you with wide eyes. I was like,
what did you just do?
I'm probably still contagious. And you're like, what did I do?
I was immediately regretful, not out of the fact that I don't love you.
No, I
I was like,
it was
oh,
great for me, but I was like, what'd you do to yourself?
I've done such a good job of keeping my distance.
Yeah, and then you kind of start getting some symptoms too. But
Yeah,
let's not go to the valley of despair on the phone.
No, it's fine. Everyone here's fine.
Yeah.
It could definitely be worse.
Oh, 100%.
So when you travel like that, I'm curious, you're on an airplane for, anywhere from 2 to 6 to 16 hours, whatever, depending on where you're going in the world. What do you do to fill your time? Are you somebody that sleeps the whole time? Are you somebody that's listening to audiobooks? Are you writing notes? What are you doing?
Yeah, good question. So I've done all the above. I kind of, if I need to sleep, I do. I can sleep on planes
Me too.
pretty easily. I don't have. I've
can be
fallen
out on
asleep
takeoff, baby.
on the runway and woken up on the runway on the other side. So I definitely can do that. If I need to, I will. I listen to books a lot. I enjoy doing that. And that's an opportunity. I mean, especially, books, most books I listen to are like 7 or 8 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
So on a trip, between your time in the airport, your time on the plane, if you get in a rental car or whatever, you're going to probably end up having about that much time traveling, give or take. And so a lot of times I can knock a book out on, there that I've been wanting to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people, man, I've got an extensive reading list of things I'm wanting to get to. And so I try to redeem that time that way. But also a lot of times when I'm listening to something, it will spark a thought, and I'll pause the book and I'll just maybe write on it, think on it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes sermons flow out of it. Sometimes things I want to talk to you about flow out of it. Ideas, I'll get waves of clarity, but to me, it's actually some space, cause a lot of my particular work meetings are so heavy in the agenda and you're talking about what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So that think time, to have an opportunity to think about something and to have some space where you're sitting still and the wheels are turning. I've actually had a lot of really great revelations or things crystallize on airplanes for whatever reason. In fact, there was a season of time, I think, where our staff hated when I traveled because they're like, we know what's going to happen. He's going to be in the air for 3 hours,
Yeah, and
he's going to
have
space to think. He's going to come back with a bunch of thoughts we probably don't like. But all that to say, all jokes aside, it's kind of a joke, but I like to do a lot of thinking there. I try to maximize that time. But if I need to sleep, I'll go right to sleep.
Yeah. So I'm curious, before I ask my next question, you talked about listening to audiobooks. Are there any you've been reading lately, or even just some favorite audiobooks that you've ever read, or like,
Oh man. Yeah, I got a lot.
any recommendations?
I got a lot.
I would say you and I, anything Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, he's just such an interesting writer. He's actually getting ready to come out with another book. I think I told you this. It's basically like from my understanding, a sequel to The Tipping Point. So I'm excited to read that.
Yeah.
I think he's fascinating, even if the subject material that he's talking about isn't top of mind for you. I think it's his approach to thought and how you work your way through thinking about a topic is actually incredibly valuable for people.
Yeah.
It's a good thought exercise.
Yeah. So I'll listen to theology books. I'll listen to leadership books. I'll listen to psychology books, or kind of a mixture of those things. So here I have Surprised by Hope, N.T. Wright, The Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard, What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith, a book at your recommendation, just to put this out there, Mating in Captivity. Anytime your wife says, hey, would you want to listen to a book called Mating in Captivity? You're like, yep. I'm into that.
Just for clarity for people, that is not a Christian book at all, but it is, I think, a good relationship book that will get you asking a lot of valuable questions.
Great conversation starters with your wife or your husband.
Yeah.
How God Changes Your Brain, which also is not a Christian book.
Correct, but is
you would think it would be, but it's not.
Yeah, that one was great.
And it's a psychology book. It's about the concepts of God, right? So
correct.
A bazillion religions out there have some
how does humanity
theology,
understand?
some belief, study of God.
Yeah.
And how you think about God, what it does literally to your brain. I've referenced that book in church before, but those are a few
leadership books. Patrick Lencioni,
Patrick Lencioni, it's an easy listen.
It is.
You're talking. It's
even
a
on
leadership
a
fable. He's going to tell you a story.
Yep.
And you're going to get a lot of good stuff about it. The Effective Executive is actually a really good one as well. Good stuff.
That was like a really brief but profound nugget you just gave people, like weeks worth of listening material right there, because I think all of those things are very much worth a listen.
I'll say this. So when I was at my alma mater, when I shout out to Nelson University, I spent some time with one of my professors who's still there from when I was there. So it's been 21 years, and he was there before I got there. So he's got some longevity. Shout out to Dr. Rosedal, a great guy. And we got to do 20 years later what I would have loved to have done 20 years ago, which was have dinner together. So I would have loved to have dinner with him as a 21, 22-year-old, to be able to pick his brain. But I don't know, whatever, better late than never. So anyway, we sat down, and he's a guy, he's so pragmatic, so sincere, very humble man, and very open man. Like, I mean, he's so well read. He's got an incredible brain. And he has spent his life day in and day out investing in his mind. And so one of the questions I asked him when we sat down was, hey, give me kind of the spectrum of your reading list and your listening, who you're listening to, who you're learning from, who you're, and how you listen and who you listen to. And, cause again, he has his PhD in theology, so highly educated, but even on a subject like that, on something that is, theological, philosophical, not just pragmatic alone, right? It's not a science, or it's not even like just straight history or something. There's a lot of elements to it. There's a historical element. There's, again, a philosophical element, and what we would call a metaphysical, spiritual element. What's the spectrum you listen to? And he has a wide spectrum. He's like, man, I listen to people who would be considered extremely, we'll say, progressive liberal theology, and then some that would be very much conservative theology. I listen to the edges. He's like, I don't spend most of my time on the edges. He's like, but I want to hear what's being said, especially from people who are respected and respectable. I want to know what are their thought processes, what are they challenging, how are they thinking, and then on the ends, and then,
Yeah.
And so I found it, I tend to do that too, but I found it encouraging. And, that, a guy who's hungry to continue to evolve. I mean, he's certainly, most rooms he goes into, he's the smartest guy in the room, especially on the subjects he's committed himself to.
Sure.
Yet he's not stopped his learning. He's going, I still have things to learn, and I want to, I want to widen my spectrum, So sometimes, that's not everybody's nature to do that. A lot of times we go, I know here's my lane. I'm going to stay in here and I'm going to listen to these voices that land here or there. So anyway.
I think there is so much value in stepping outside of your echo chamber. And even if you don't ever change your mind about anything, that you listen to somebody that has a differing opinion from you and you keep your same opinion. But I think it is really good for our hearts and minds, and even just for us to remember other people's humanity when we choose to step outside of ourselves and listen to the way that other people think and how they came to the conclusions that they came to. Because I think sometimes then it keeps us from getting stuck in a monolith where we see people who are different than us as so other that we can't relate, And so I just think even as a brain exercise, it's healthy to do. I would say for me, a couple audiobooks that were really good as well. The Road Back to You by Suzanne Stabile. Fantastic book, easy read, really helps you kind of get some good introspective.
Is that titled The Road Back to? Is that essentially finding yourself, discovering yourself?
Yeah. So it is an Enneagram oriented book. That's kind of her expertise. But it really is helping you get back to the root of who you are and really understand your motivation for things, what lights your soul on fire, that kind of thing. So that then you can even just understand the way that you're looking at the world and the way the world sees you a little bit more clearly and feel more. I think a lot of people start to feel really even kind of out of sync with themselves, and they can't really put their finger on why. And I think she does a really good job in such a, her sweet, gentle Southern way of doing that. She's also just so great to listen to. And another one kind of in that same vein.
Can we stay there for a second?
Yeah.
Were you going to move to another book?
I was, but go ahead.
Okay. So I'm curious this thought, because, you hear this a lot in Christianity or in our tribes and all this stuff about a concern with people being overly self-absorbed and just too much emphasis on themselves. So, and I think obviously the concern is like, we don't want people to just be these self-absorbed people. And then, but also like lacking self-awareness is not helping anyone.
That's right.
So when you have something like A Road Back to You and like a focus on self, I know like when I look out and I go see a lot of people trying to do more and more self-discovery, it makes me want to cheer them on, because I go, the more freedom you can find there, the more clarity and truth you can find there, especially if it leads you to more freedom, the better life you're going to have and the better impact you're going to have on people around you. But you also see people get stuck in themselves.
Sure.
And not be able to get out of that. So I feel like I've watched you navigate that in a really classy way, and I think in a healthy way. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Like, how do you, focus on like a road back to you in that way that you do the appropriate amount of self-care, appropriate amount of self-worth, self-work, and self-help and digging, without it becoming this
all about me.
All
and
about
what I
me.
need. And yeah, that's actually a really good question, Greg. I think for me, I see it as the best gift that I can give the world, and the only gift I can give the world, honestly, that I have full control over is the best version of me, right? Like me becoming the healthiest version of myself will inevitably make the world a better place. And I don't mean that in a big, weird, grandiose way. I mean, even just in the tiny micro things you do every day, right? You will leave the world a better place than you found it. And you will love the people that you love in a healthier way. You'll be more effective in the way that they feel that love. And I think you will be able to more fully fulfill your purpose for being on this earth, whatever that may be. And so it's really not selfish when you approach it from that viewpoint of, I'm not just doing this because I want everything to be all about me. But you're going like, this is the best gift I could give anybody that I come in contact with. If I'm not easily triggered by the person at the grocery store, which, I mean, I've been easily triggered by people in situations like that. I'm not proud of it. I've been there where it's like, man, this person got under my skin, man. Well, why? And if I do a little bit of digging to figure out why, then I won't do that to the next person, and I won't dump something stupid on them that they're carrying into their day and now, furthering, the drip down the line. I heard something really interesting recently, and I can't remember the exact scientific background to it, but essentially everything that's ever been done in history is still reverberating through the physical universe. And it's continuing to go and come back, and I can't describe it well at all, but I read it and it was like, wow, the things that we do, the things that we say, when I say energy, I actually mean physical energy, that we're putting out into the world is there, and it's continuing to affect. We're such a web of how we affect each other. And so it made me, I try to be very cognizant of that, and I'm not great at it, but I'm trying to more and more keep that in mind, that the things that I do are not just being done in a moment, but they do reverberate through people. They do have a trickle down effect that can cause great healing or great harm. And so the healthier I am, all that to say, the healthier I am, the more that I'm contributing to the health of other people too. So it's not just about me.
Yeah. So you think about the process of loving someone. So first, in human relationships, you meet them, right? So you meet them first. When you meet them, you get to know them eventually. Some people, not everybody, but someone that you end up, we'll take us, for example. I saw you, I met you, and then eventually we took the time and the energy to get to know each other. And then once you get to know each other, then you can decide whether you're going to accept that person, who they actually are. And then once you accept that person, again, then you're now you're loving them. Eventually you love them, right? So that's what's kind of the unique relationship with an infant or a baby, right? You have a baby and it's
you don't know them.
You don't know them, right?
But you'll predetermined that you're going to accept and love them. Right?
Exactly.
It's wild.
That's that really unique relationship. But most people, again, we meet each other after a lot of that stuff's already formed. We met each other in our, early 20s. You were 19, I was 22, 23. And so, we're still evolving as people, but there was already someone in there to know. And so I met you, I was attracted to you, I was curious about you, but that process of actually getting to know you. And then once I got to know you and you got to know me, we had to decide, are we going to accept who this person actually is now that I peeled back a lot of these layers? Yeah. And then that's when love really starts to grow, right? And then of course we're a work in progress. So we're continuing to know this person, but know their new self or their evolving self. And, love grows that way. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. by the way, that's the pattern of God with us, that Jesus took on our flesh. So that means he understood. He was tempted in every way as we are, just yet without sin. So he understands us. He met us. He got to know us. He accepted us, and he loves us. Same process with yourself, right? And I think the assumption is that just because I'm in my own head means I know myself.
Yeah.
That is not true. That is not true. A lot of people are in their own head and don't know themselves
well.
So something
at
like
all.
A Road Back to You.
Yes.
You know,
that's where that is so valuable.
Yeah. It'd be pretty normal to be 20, 30, 40, 50, however old you are, have been in your own head and still not really know yourself.
Yeah.
And you hear courageous, honest people go, I'm not even sure who I am.
Yeah.
Or this event happened at the end of it. I'm like, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they never did know.
That's right.
So if I'm going to, as you said, not contaminate the atmosphere, am I going to put, the right things into the world around me that are going to flow out of love and loving yourself, which is very critical. It's important. Yeah. That means you have to meet yourself. You have to get to know yourself.
That's right.
You have to accept yourself and love yourself. Once you do that, I think then you can not be self-absorbed where you're all the time falling for everything and living in insecurity and
it's the
trying to
opposite
feed
of
the
that.
beast, right? Now
right.
You actually find a level of freedom to where, your instincts and the way that you behave around other people, the way you think about other people, you're doing it from a place of confidence and clarity and not out of insecurity and fear.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole different animal, right?
Go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
finish your thought.
I'm done.
I think that's such an excellent point, because how can you possibly give the best of yourself to the world if you don't even really know what that is? How can you be the most loving version of you to someone else if you don't really know you and you don't really love yourself? And I think you just hit the nail on the head. There are people that go through their whole lives and don't really know, or think that they know something to be true about themselves, but they've not really done that introspective work. And I think coming to a place of acceptance and love for yourself enables you to now have a fuller thing to give away. And there is such joy in being able to give from the best of yourself. So I think that that's really, really important work.
You had another book you were saying.
I did. Yeah. I just realized I don't have my phone over here. I think it's just called The Enneagram, or maybe The Enneagram and You. It's Father Richard Rohr, and then I believe the other guy's last name is Robert, spelled Robert, but he's a French author. I'll have to look that one up on my phone. I'm sorry. But that one is also just another fantastic, really more in depth, if you're interested in the Enneagram in particular, more in depth into it, of helping you really nail down your motivations for things, and helping you understand yourself. And just comes from a really, really beautiful, healthy place. And I think all three of those authors have done such a wonderful job of sharing their own journeys and being vulnerable as well, to help people kind of feel the freedom to do the same thing. I would say one of the best gifts as well when you're on a journey like that is if you have somebody that you can take it with. And I think it's very important that that's a safe space to do it. That can be hard to find. You've been a wonderful companion for me in that. I hope that I've been able to provide the same for you.
Definitely.
To some capacity. But I think being able to have those kinds of conversations where, gosh, there was a season there where I was starting to kind of dive into some things in myself for the first time that I had never really peeled back the layers on. And I felt like every conversation we had, I was tearing up, and I'd be like, I'm so embarrassed. I don't even like to say this out loud. Some of that stuff can be hard to go there. And I think having someone that goes, that's all right. Like, I've got parts like that too. and giving you space to work it out, and asking you good questions, and sitting in a place where they're not judging you, but they're just holding a space for you to share those feelings. It helps you make so much more progress. So, I mean, gosh, I can't encourage people enough. If you are, if you're married, try, have those kind of conversations. It will bring you closer. It will bring you so much clarity into the other person's mind and heart. And it's just good for you. It's good for you to build that kind of trust with people. It's interesting because one more that we started talking about before the episode started with our fearless producer Scott over here, but it was one that you and I read literally like 20 years ago, called Love is a Choice. I can't even remember the name of the author. I'll have to look it up. But it was a really, really good book into dealing with like independence, codependence, interdependence, which I think is really healthy for people to understand that. And it will help you have much healthier relationships. And that's another great one, that to sit down with the closest relationships in your life and be able to have some healthy dialogue on that, I think is really good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that Love is a Choice book. I remember I read that. I was in college, probably in my late teens, early 20s. It was actually before I met you. In fact, I think I gave it to you to read.
I don't recall.
Yeah, I think I did. But I remember reading it, and a couple of the concepts that really I found enlightening was he talked about in the book that when you're growing up, your family is your standard for normal. You're not like comparing your family, whether it was healthy or dysfunctional. You're not going like, let's say you grew up in a really dysfunctional family. You're to you, that dysfunction is what a family is. It's normal. So if we yell at each other, or if we don't talk about, we don't have conflicts, or we have intense conflicts, or whatever whatever in between, how we relate to each other, whether we have dinner together every night or we never eat together, whether we hug and kiss each other or we don't show any physical affection, whether we all tell each other we love each other, or those words are never said. Whatever your normal was, that is your normal. So that is a standard of a normal family. Everything outside of that will be weird to you. So if you came from a family that was not physically affectionate, and you're around a physically affectionate family, that's super uncomfortable. It's weird to you. What you're not doing growing up is comparing your family to some perfect family, right? Your family is the standard.
That's right.
And so what it takes is a tremendous amount of discipline when you become an adult, to go back and to look and to find some standards for health, and then to kind of measure your upbringing by those standards. And when there's a discrepancy, instead of just going with your normal, which is normal to do, you go, well, no, I don't do that. I don't say that. Men don't do that. Men either lash out or shut down, or, whatever they do. Instead of taking your standard for normal and just living that way, to find a standard for healthy.
That's right. And
then take your normal and run it across that, and then go through the process of changing where you need to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up just perpetuating some things that feel comfortable to you because they're normal, but might be unhealthy. So now you hand it to, the next generation, or whatever. You end up maybe blowing up some relationships that could have worked.
Yeah.
If you'd have been healthy,
Yeah.
So I went, wow, okay. That caused me to then go back and sort of scrutinize my own life, because I just operated under the assumption that it was all good. Like, we love God, and my family went to church, and my parents, are still married, and, they told me they loved me, and I knew everybody loved everybody, and blah, blah, blah. And
so
it was
you
like,
just assume that's the operating system to work with.
we now have the model, and I'm just going to model. Well, there's a lot of good stuff. When you go in there and you scrutinize it, you go, I'm keeping that.
For sure.
Man, I'm keeping that for sure. I'm doubling down on that. That's great. And then some of it, you go, well, let me question that. Is that like black and white, is that one way to do it? Is it the way to do it?
Right.
Is it my way to do it?
I
Is
was
it
gonna
our
say-
way to do it?
And sometimes I think one of the pitfalls people fall into too, as well, is that you assume, okay, if it's not the right thing for me, people go like, "Oh, well, that was just wrong." Well, you know what? Maybe it just wasn't the right thing for the two of you, because you and your spouse are different people than your parents were, you know, or that her parents were. And so I think that's an important distinction too, because there are some things that you go, that should never be replicated. This was really unhealthy. And then you go, you know, that's kind of their personality. It's not really us. I'll give a concrete example for people. When you and I first got married, you would tease me, right? Like little jokes, you know, whatever. And never mean-spirited, never. Like it was not.
I was trying to banter.
You were trying to banter with me, but like it was foreign to me. And I think probably most of the times I had ever witnessed that in relationships, some of the people kind of were mean-spirited. They were kind of trying to barb the other. You know, some of the people that I had seen as marriages that were modeled for me in people in leadership, whatever, they would kind of throw little cutting barbs at each other. And so it wasn't innocuous. It kind of was meant to tear each other down or get their little pound of flesh or, you know, be a little embarrassing or whatever.
Yeah, sarcasm often is masking something a little more intense.
That's right. Yeah. And so that was my paradigm. That when I witnessed that, there usually was a little edge to it. For you, you had witnessed it in a couple that you looked up to greatly because they had a really healthy marriage.
It was their shtick, and
they were
crazy about each other.
They were best friends. I know, you know, you were able to tell me once we started talking about who you would kind of pick that up from, and they're wonderful people and they're crazy about each other. And it really is just like kind of their way of having fun together. There's not a mean bone in their bodies, and they're not trying to tear each other down. They're trying to crack each other up, right? So that's where you were coming into the relationship with that model. That's where I was coming into that relationship. And so you would crack these little jokes, and I would be kind of hurt, or I would be like, wait, what is he trying to say? I'd be confused because I'm like, are you trying to say something serious to me on this topic? Like what is this? And so we had to sit down and have a conversation about it, you know, where it would have been easy for us to go round and round about something like that for years and never really say what we meant. And you just think I'm oversensitive and I just think you're a jerk. And that wouldn't have gotten us anywhere. But we were able to sit down because we had some kind of the shared language that we had started from reading some of these books together. And you were able to tell me, well, yeah, I saw this couple do this, and
they would turn it into a sitcom, you know, and it was funny.
And it was they were having so much fun. They were making each other laugh. They were making other people laugh. It was all good spirited. That was eye opening for me. And then I was able to tell you, man, that was not my experience with those kind of things. Like I never saw it like that. Whenever I witnessed it, it was kind of mean spirited. And so we were able to come to a healthy new place where it's like, you really dialed it back. You didn't eliminate it completely, but
pretty close. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say, especially
we embarrassed ourselves a couple of times kind of in public, right? Because I thought, hey, we're going to dance together and kind of have fun. And it was something that was, you were really
like
upset.
Struck a nerve.
It struck a nerve.
Hurt.
And so I was like, wait, you know, that's cool. That was their shtick. That's cool. That was their sitcom. That was their thing. If that's not for, like, what are we going to be?
Sure.
And it's got to be mutual.
And part of it, I think, was the newness of the relationship. We had not dated a long time before we got married. We never even lived in the same city before we lived in the same house. So I feel like you were so respectful. And like you said, dial it back to basically zero at that point. Over the years, that's been able to kind of creep back in to where we do tease each other. And I know you love me. I'm very secure in our relationship. And so it is just funny and it makes me laugh. And, you know, I'll kick it back at you a little bit here and there. And it is coming from a secure place of neither one of us is trying to hurt the other person. We're trying to make the other person laugh. But you were so respectful of where we were in that place once I was communicating that. So I think having some of that groundwork where it just allows you, like you said, to talk about what your normal was and not judge the other person because their normal was different.
Yeah.
You guys both go, okay, they were just different. And so what's good for us? Because it might be completely different than what you had or me or both.
Yeah.
You know, we might come up with a whole new framework for our relationship.
Yeah. I'm really glad we got a hold of that on the very front end of our relationship, because what it does is it takes something that could potentially be combustible, which is if you criticize my upbringing, you criticize whether it's my family or, you know, the group of people in my family of origin, my environment that I came out of.
Now my dudes
now I get defensive, right? When I start from the idea that, hey, my normal is my normal, and yet my normal might not be fully healthy. And there's some things about my normal that probably aren't healthy. And if I can identify those things, I can keep the good things,
right,
and build on those, and then I can fix the things that need to change that are not healthy.
Yeah.
But I may not be able to see that clearly, you know, while I'm in the middle of it, because all of it is normal to me.
Right.
So that now, if I start from that idea that there are some things, I probably have some blind spots or some things that I think are normal that are actually unhealthy. And so if I start with that belief, now this person on the other side is actually an ally in helping me to see those things. In fact, they're probably going to see them more clearly than I am, because they're from the outside looking in. There's a huge advantage to that, to being on the outside. And so now I'm actually open to it. And so we early on were able to go back, look at our upbringings, look at our environments, look at our families, and to scrutinize in an honoring way.
Sure.
And to find the things that were like, man, that's amazing. Let's build on that. And then here's some things that we probably need to think more about. We need to, you know, and there were times where I had a vantage point into your upbringing or your family.
You have a bird's eye view. You weren't down in it.
100%.
Sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees.
You know, we need to think about that. We need to talk about that, and vice versa. And oh, man, in 20 years, almost never have we gotten defensive. Like, yeah, you shouldn't talk about my family like that. There have been times where we would go, hey, I don't think you're right about that.
Sure.
But I never felt like it was just straight defensiveness. It was like, no, Greg, I think, just
don't know if that's accurate.
Yeah, your bird's eye view probably isn't as robust as you think it is.
Yeah.
Let me give you some more data.
Yeah.
And because of that, you know, and I think that a lot of that's attributed to that book, like to those ideas that came out of Love is a Choice. Because of that, we had this openness early on that I think I can't even quantify how much we've reaped from that, just being willing to not get defensive from the other person, to see them as an ally in finding those things, even, you know, having a desire to not just, you know, cling to your normal, but to find what are those things that, you know, that feel okay to me or feel familiar to me that are actually unhealthy, and I don't want to pass those on.
Agreed.
Man, I don't know how many gems that we've discovered in that process. You know, so
countless, truly countless.
Yeah.
I can't recommend taking that journey enough.
Yeah, I guess I would give that piece of advice to somebody, wherever you're at in your journey. Certainly it's applicable, but especially maybe young couples or new couples to go, you know, come to that spot, realize that your normal is your standard, that your standard is your normal, like what you grew up in, that's normal to you. And a lot of that stuff that you see outside of it that might feel weird to you, it might actually be right. It might actually be healthy behavior. It just is so weird to you.
Yeah.
And to go, you're going to at least have a few of those, maybe a bunch, and you'll be better off. Your relationship will be better off. You'll really end up, I think, a more healthy person over the long haul if you'll start with that belief, and then you'll be willing to look for those things, and you'll be receptive to the point of view of the other person.
And I would also say on both ends, like giving and receiving, being very respectful in the way that you bring those things up. Don't try to barb the other person or their family. That's not cool. No. There's nothing productive about that. 100%. But being respectful about the way that you approach it, and then on the receiving end, not seeing anything is so sacred that it can't be talked about or that it can't be examined.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we feel like, oh, don't go there, don't talk about that,
Yeah.
And it's like, no, talk about it. It doesn't mean you're sitting and ripping it to shreds,
Yeah.
but examine it, like you said, and because you may find things there that are absolute gold for you that if you had made it too precious to be discussed, you would forever miss. Yeah. So any final recommendations? I feel like we honestly,
That's enough for now, I think.
yeah, I was gonna say this is a great book list for people. If you're on a flight, if you're traveling, those kind of things, like this is perfect for you too, because I think all of these will give you great insight into yourself, into other people, into how you relate to others and how you relate to God, and just open up a new world and a new way of thinking. So it's a good list.
We just got the high sign from our
It is time
from our producer. I think time to wrap it up.
It's time to wrap it up. That's perfect. I have had a lot of water, so
I know what that means.
Yep.
It means it's time to wrap it up. Guys, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time on Dialogue.